What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpollia sitting on the couch, making some money, investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. Today, I'm going to actually jump into a discussion on the Universal Lending DAO, where, what the state of it is today. It's trading really cheap and, relative to the original price. Me being a value investor, I always want to figure out, is it going to be worth it? Before I do that, I want to just give a couple quick updates about this property. 9264 Dickens Ave in Surfside, Florida. I did a video about this last week where I did like a little bit more of a full due diligence. But there were a couple of things that have come out that are going to be different. If you remember, this property hasn't even launched yet. But I wanted to put some thoughts out there. It's been great. There's been a lot of back and forth in the Discord from a bunch of different people asking questions. This co-owner has been good about answering questions quickly. Shared some of their thoughts and plans for the property. So a couple things. If you remember in my original video, I'm very concerned about the $23,000 a month debt payment. I still am very concerned about it because it's not officially taken care of. But I was glad to see that they've included in this info that the co-owner is also very concerned about it. Right, their goal is to get the LTV down to 50 or 55%. Doing this by just using some of the money that they raised from sales of tokens to pay that debt down, and then to refinance into a better loan. I wasn't able to make it on the call that they did with some of the other people in Discord, but I've got the download from a couple of different people who I trust on here. So I think even though their stories didn't match perfectly, I think that I understand enough what's going on to talk a little bit about it. So it sounds like he thinks he's going to be able to get at 50% LTV, 5.5% interest rate. Sounds reasonable to me. I think that where rates are today, that probably exists. It wasn't clear if that's going to be a 30-year fixed or an interest only. I calculated the payment for both. It's going to be either 10,000 or 12,600. So one of these two payments. If you recall, when I did the video initially, it was $23,000 is what's being paid currently. Obviously, if they do this, this becomes a deal that I can get behind, a much more strongly because that was my biggest concern, right? Like the income from the property didn't seem like it could come anywhere close to covering the debt service. Um, if you look at what the yield will be at 50% leverage, I think this site is still a work in progress, so I don't think these are accurate. I'm not even sure. I don't know how they're getting this estimated price. We did get an appraisal. It appraised at 4.45 million. That's a little concerning to me because it was listed for sale for less than that earlier in the year and didn't sell. But it wasn't listed for a real long time, so maybe it's a reasonable number. Um, a couple other things that we had talked about and are a little bit different is they're putting in the current tax payment versus whenever I underwrite a deal, I like to look at what the taxes are going to be, right? Oftentimes your tax rate, your tax bill goes up because a sale of the property lets the city know that, oh, there's this property is worth more now. Even if you're, or the city or county, whoever assesses the taxes in this particular jurisdiction, even if you're in a state where they don't do that immediately, at some point in time, you're typically going to, the tax man is going to catch up with what your actual value is, or at least get closer to it. And so this is this is about 40% of the rate of the tax payment that I was using. So, keep that in mind if you're doing some new math with the new interest rate and you've calculated, you're trying to figure out, it does seem like, if you have a 4.7 cap rate, your debt is dilutive, right? It's not accretive debt at 5.5% interest rate. The cap rate's going to be, and that's if you just trust their cap rate, right? And that's like I just talked about. I think the real number is a little bit lower. Lofty never does a vacancy collection loss in there. They don't have any repairs and maintenance built into it and whatnot. So I think that whether or not it's still very much just an appreciation play, but by having a co-owner that's dedicated to putting the debt in a position that the property could actually cover it if it had to, I'd feel much more confident in that kind of investment if that's what you're going for, right? And like I said, I mean, I think this yield is going to change dramatically once you get to 50% LTV. Um, and once the numbers are all finished up. But so we'll see. But I just wanted to mention that. And then the other things, I think this co-owner is coming across as very professional. I wanted to mention, like, I asked a couple questions and got instant answers, and it was like with some backup that made perfect sense, right? So like the first one was, this appraisal that was done, it's marked as a subject to completion per plans and specifications versus being an as-is appraisal. And so this is really common with new construction. They'll give you an appraisal, what they think the property is going to be before you're done with it. But he said, no, no, this has been done, and he actually immediately sent over the certificate of occupancy for the property. Yeah, it's had a CO for over a year, so it seems really strange. And usually when you get the CO, it's just substantially complete. Like there might be some, that's why if you're wondering like, well, why it's been a whole year since it's been done. Well, it might not have really been done, right? They might have gotten the sign off, and then they've done a lot of cosmetic stuff to like sort of wrap it up since then. I'm not 100% certain. I don't remember when the lease was, but so anyway, yeah, I mean, it seems really silly to have a subject to completion appraisal. So I think he's right. I think this is just an error on the appraiser's part. This is something, though, if I were going to make a large investment in this, I might ask to have that corrected, right? If it is an error on the appraiser's part, the appraiser should be happy to fix it and send you a revised one, because that's a big deal to to have an inaccuracy in your appraisal when you're really counting on it, right? If and so why I'd have some reservations is like if you think about, okay, what if the appraiser was given some plans that you're going to add an ADU or you're going to do some, there's some other scope of work that you're going to do. You're going to build a cabana by the pool, whatever it is, right? Like some additional work that would increase the value, and so it's subject to completion of those plans. I don't believe that's what's going on here, but like because I'm a very cautious investor, if I were going to put a lot of money into something like this, I just asked for that because it shouldn't be a big deal for the appraiser to fix it, right? I mean, if they're like it's a serious error if they're telling you it's the wrong type of appraisal, and so but as much as I completely believe that that's the scenario that it's just a mistake, like why not just get the appraiser to give us the right one, right? And then the property inspection was even funnier because there's some issues, but a very small number of issues, especially for the size of the house. In the listing, they actually mentioned that the co-owner's already gone out and taken care of a couple of the things that were mentioned, and then a few of the things are going to be deducted from the tenant security deposit. None of the issues, struck me as being a really big deal. There was some like stress fractures or like maybe settlement cracks. Um, I don't know what it's like, in that market, how normal that is. We see that all the time here in San Antonio. You'll have brand new construction and you'll start to get these little cracks, and so not something that makes me particularly nervous, but it is, just because it's pointed out, I wanted to mention it. It's obviously not something they're going to do something about, right? But they, the things that they could, they did. But so yeah, so then I was like, well, why do they think it's 21 years old? Was this actually a ground up development, or was it, was there some structure that you were like improving upon, expanding? Because there used to be a home there. Um, so I thought it was possible that that this was just a huge expansion of an existing property. But asked the question, immediately got this picture back, right? I mean, like I like when the guy, that the guy has this data at his fingertips. It's very different from a lot of the other co-owners that we've talked to, where you ask a question, you get a vague answer, you get, oh, let me get back to you about that. I mean, this was all within like 3 or 4 minutes of me asking the question. He's just blasting off these pictures. He's like, oh, no, no, look, I got the same thing with that certificate of occupancy. And this one, just in case you're worried that like this isn't actually the property, well, we got the address painted on the front here, and that, so fairly certain it is. And when you look at the map, you can tell. So that's all I really wanted to say about this one. It seems like all the interactions I've had with them so far, which have been very limited, they strike me as being professional, but they're giving good answers to the questions that we have. But the most important one for me was this. the same attitude towards the debt, at least, right? Now, one of the things that I'd really like to see Lofty do is when they have a co-owner that's planning to do something like this, just make it programmatic, right? Build it into the structure where, like, okay, the first 500K in equity that we sell, we're actually just automatically paying the bank with that. I'd love to see that. I don't think Lofty's going to do it anytime soon. But it would be nice because we have definitely seen co-owners put info in here about what they plan to do with the debt, and have it not come to fruition, right? Sometimes it's been, there's been some listings where they're like, oh, they're going to pay it down aggressively, and then they didn't. And then others where they thought, it was going to stay outstanding for longer, and, there's been bigger chunks paid down. So it would be really nice to have some way to make sure that that's being done, uh, you know, in a way that's not, it would just contractually, right? Where the DAO can say, no, no, you're receiving these funds. They have to go to this, they have to go to the mortgage pay down first, even though that's your mortgage and it's unlocking more tokens for you as the co-owner. It'd be great if it did that. If we just had um, some certainty around it, But again, I don't think Lofty is going to do it. I'd love to see them work on a structure like that, though. But I think this is great that they have at least the same attitude towards that. They so far just strike me as a more professional co-owner than several, than the ones that we really worry about. This really got me. Like I was very happy to see, like, didn't just say no, it's new construction. I don't know why they said it's 21 years old. Actually had some backup right away, shared it. And it does really actually also make you realize, like, what a robust structure this is too, right? This isn't just a simple stick built home or anything, which is, it's nice to see how that was done. But that's all I really want to say about that. I told you it was going to be a quick update. Sorry, we're 12 minutes in and I'm getting into the topic I really wanted to talk about, the Universal Lending DAO. I also think this is going to be a relatively quick one, but if you don't know what this is something that Lofty had set up and had been administering themselves, or sort of. I mean, I guess we were voting on it. It is a DAO. It's supposed to be, um, decentralized and autonomous, but they were handling the payments for it, and it got messed up at a certain point. And so, um, it's, all the individual DAOs on Lofty, if they don't have money, instead of doing a capital call, can borrow money from the ULD. I'm going to just call it the ULD if it has cash at the time. Very often it does not have cash. You can see there's been some really inconsistency. So they said, okay, initially 200,000 was raised. Um, is the initial capital? Well, that would be 4,000 tokens. But then they go, okay, well, there's 2,000 tokens available at $50 each. So it's a little bit inconsistent, and then they tell you, like, how it's supposed to be paid back. This all came to light, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago. That oh, and the spreadsheet is what's really going to. So they share the spreadsheet. I actually just made a copy of it and was messing with it a little bit. This stuff is all my own work here, but this is the current loan balance, right? And they say, okay, they say there's an initial loan of $100,000, and the current balance is 77,000, which means, and this includes accrued interest. Like, if you look at their calculations, it includes the interest that's accrued. So it means that at some point principal got paid out or was written off. There's no note anywhere of any principal being written off. So what I believe is that they were paying out principal. Lofty at some point in the Discord acknowledged that. They did say it was their mistake. This was over 6 months ago, though. It said they were doing an internal audit, and then I never heard anything about it since. Um, I think it's really pretty terrible that they've just sat on it for so long, but it's also like, I hope that they plan to do something to make it right, because, like, for example, when I bought into this, it was paying out a tremendous yield, right? And I don't think I would have bought into it had I realized that yield, because I mean, they just tell you it's a APR, right? And then when you get it in your account, uh, it shows up as, um, in your rent wallet, just in your rent, just like everything else. So you don't know, was this interest or was this um, principal. And so they were basically paying out principal, calling it yield, basically giving you your money back and saying, hey, look at this big return. And so I bought into it thinking, hey, I'm getting this big return. There's very little info like to be able to do your own due diligence. This is all they've ever provided is this spreadsheet that, basically just says how much is outstanding for each loan, what's accrued. So it's really hard to get a sense. They don't update anywhere that I can find, excuse me, how much cash is available on Lofty Assist. At least they have an operating reserve number. I actually asked Limas about this, and he said that he's just pulling this from their API, but I can't see this anywhere on their site. Is this just the amount that's accumulated from trading? Um, Probably is my guess based on the amount of tokens that have been sold. But so like if there is cash being held that's from payments or anything, we don't know where that is or how much it is. But at different times in the past, I've asked, hey, we'd like to get a loan for this particular property for this amount, and I've been told, oh, the ULD doesn't have any money. And I mean, this is as far back as sometime in December, and this is when this first really came to my attention. That was after I had already bought a number of tokens. Um, but so I want to go over how many tokens it looks like are outstanding. So I pulled this info in the allo.info. It looks like initially, what is that? A billion tokens were made. Um, Lofty's still holding the vast majority of them, right? So they created them, but they still have all these. And then it looks like 3,990 were issued instead of 4,000. I don't really know why. But then a big chunk of those are still sitting in Lofty's, what I think of as their debt wallet, the one that's usually holding the tokens, um, where the mortgage tokens basically that get released when the mortgage gets paid down. So I think that leaves 2,264 that were actually sold. If you see this number here, this is if we take the outstanding loan balance divided by the outstanding tokens, we've only got 34 bucks in value here, total outstanding balance relative to the tokens. And remember, this loan balance includes accrued interest that we've been supposed to be accruing at 13.5%. We're currently getting paid out, let's see, uh, at the $50 price, only a 1.24% yield. So, clearly, well, a couple of things. One, initial loan 100,000 doesn't match up with 2264 being sold. Now, some of these did end up getting sold as a discount. And this is when it really became clear to people, and like a lot of people started asking about what's happening, is when Lofty started selling new tokens. Um, and and some of those they were selling at a discount to the $50, and it's like, well, what are they doing, right? If they're raising new money. But so it wasn't that it was really completely new because it was part of these original issued ones. They were just the ones that were sitting in the debt wallet. Again, this is, I'm not a crypto guy. This is how I understood it looking at allo.info. Definitely, check that out. I wish Lofty would just actually answer questions about it. As far back as December, Jerry acknowledged that there's an issue, said this team was doing going to do an internal audit, and then I think sometime in January or February said, okay, we actually did the audit, but we're not sharing the info yet because we're busy with other things. And then as far as I can tell, that info was never shared. Um, this page certainly hasn't been updated at all. And I think it should be, right? Because there are more, we don't have the normal where you have a order book that's how, where you can see, like this just says 4,000 tokens. Well, that doesn't seem right. Because it does look like there's 1,700 in the debt wallet. I mean, if it's actually 4,000 tokens we're dividing it by, then we've got, well, this is actually, we've got like $19 in value left, unless there's some cash that we don't know about, right? And that's what makes it so frustrating. Like if they have this info and they're not sharing it, like if you see where this is trading, like there's been a bunch of sales, 25, some 19, some 20. There's just been a bunch of sales at very deep discounts. People are selling out because they're not getting a yield and they're not getting an answer. And this is all stuff that seems to me to be 100% in Lofty's control. Now, like obviously, Lofty can't control if these loans are paying, right? Like, what I was doing when I started to put this info together, because it is selling really cheap, is I was trying to figure out, well, what's the value of, I actually went back and was looking at each one of these properties and said, okay, what's the value of just the loans that I think there's a real good chance that'll be paid back? And then I'm willing to pay that much, right? Because if I think that it'll eventually get paid back and interest is accruing at 13.5%, um, that looks a lot like my regular deal or my original deal that I thought I was getting. And then all the other trash in there that maybe will get paid back and maybe won't, that'll all be just like, a little bonus, right? For taking the risk with the uncertainty. So that's how I came up with where I'm willing to buy this today. Um, but I mean, it took a lot of work to dig in. I had to like actually go through and look at every single one of these and figure out. And some of these are real small amounts, right? So I didn't spend a ton of time on them. But like some of them I just know, right? A lot of these properties were involved with Yome, have, some of them have large other outstanding debts. Some of them are being sold. Like I know Bowmanville is in the process of being sold. So I think there's a real good chance that's going to get paid off. Some of them what are interesting, they show up more than once, right? Because we took this big ULD loan. This was for, to switch managers. We had to pay off the old manager. But then in addition to that, it looks like they took one to pay insurance. I think almost all these small ones are when they're just basically taking money to pay insurance. Because Lofty pays the property insurance for a lot of those. So I don't know. I mean, that's really all I know about what's going on with this. I know a lot of you guys own some of this. Um, I'm curious if you think this is accurate because I know a lot of you understand the blockchain stuff a lot better than me. Do you think this is the correct outstanding tokens, 2,264? I actually didn't even look at what we have. Yeah, I mean, this just says 4,000 of 4,000. I, I, I mean, I really hope this is wrong, right? It doesn't match up with the allo.info numbers, unless I'm just looking at the wrong entry. But this strikes me as being more right anyway, because 2,000 initially sold would be 100,000, um, you know, which matches up with the initial loan. And then we know they did go back and start selling some tokens again. Before then, everybody realized there was a problem, and then they halted that. So it seems to me this number's right, which really is sad, right? Like it means like, okay, we don't have a lot of value here, but maybe there's also cash sitting somewhere from those sales, and we just don't, we're not given that. Like, I actually think it's ridiculous that how little info we're given on this one and expected to make any sort of decision on whether or not, to buy this. Like you can see basically the spreadsheet with the loans, and I think somewhere I also found um, the loan document, but I think it was in like one of the you have to go into the actual entities to find the loan documents, right? Like those should all just be included in a documents tab on here. I shouldn't have to like dig to get, okay, what do those loan documents look like on each one? And then certainly if there's cash, if there's an operating reserve, if we really have this 3,000 bucks here, and if there's other cash that's accumulated, because hopefully since then they haven't just been paying out everything still. Like hopefully they're just paying out only the interest that they receive. And so there should be some cash accumulating again. Um, I think this is one of their biggest errors. I think, from my perspective, I mean, I don't know. I know there's been quite a few that I've, complained about. I think honestly, for me, the absolute worst thing is their tax forms not having actual basis. But beyond that, I mean, this is one of the biggest ones where because it's like it's wholly in their control, right? And then they made an error and admitted to the error 6 months ago, and if just and I understand they're busy with lots of other things. But if I had a big, I don't have a ton of this. I think I've got 70 tokens. But if this were something that I had like some huge amount of money in, or you know, I think a lot of people looked at this as like a very conservative investment relative to the other lofty investments, and it turned out to just be a train wreck. Um, I think it's possible that at some point in the future they'll just make it right. They'll do something, I know at one point they talked about clawing back the principal that they had paid out to people. I don't think just putting the principal back really makes me very happy because if you think about it, like most of us, I think would not have bought into it if it didn't just have this sky high yield that they were showing. And that yield it was just principal, it was primarily principal being paid back. And if that sounds like a scam that you've heard of, it's very similar in structure to a Ponzi scheme, right? I'm not saying it is a Ponzi scheme because I think they did it accidentally. I don't think they had some intent to defraud us. But when you take money from investors and then you start to pay them fake high yields, which is exactly what was happening, and that induces new investors to give you money, which again is what was happening. They were selling uh, new tokens, and I mean it's the whole reason. Even if they weren't being bought from them, they were profiting from other people buying them from other people, right? Like because they get paid on the trades and that from a completely fictitious yield number, right? I mean, if you're giving me principal back and you're calling that yield, I mean, it is an egregious error, right? It's not just a little bit of an error. So, the fact that they've sat on this one for so long without a response, I understand, okay, they had tax season, right? And that was sort of their excuse early on, and then all the Yom stuff happened. But at a certain point, I feel like just sitting on it, and I think that probably part of the problem is if you look at a lot of these properties, a lot of these are touched by that Yom issue, right? But it doesn't stop you from fixing the accounting error, right? It doesn't stop you from adjusting things and making that right. And then okay, beyond that, yeah, maybe some of these loans are going to be terrible loans and aren't going to get paid back because there's more bigger problems with the properties. But that's part of the original risk that we signed up for, right? Like we understand that this is not going to be like we voted for the loans to be made. Although I don't know if there's just some automatic vote that makes these happen because we don't see votes for that. The last vote in the DAO, I think, is all the way back in December. Yeah, and it's the Raymond one. And this is my only interaction with it. This I actually proposed this vote because this was a property I was trying to move um, move it from one manager to the next. But then after that, I don't know. There hasn't been another one since, but it's because when I've asked about it, they've been out of money. Um, I think that was part of why they started selling the additional tokens to have funds for that. But it is, I think part of the reason they were out of money is because they were paying out principal and calling it yield, right? And so I don't know. It's all a mess, but I'm curious. One, if anyone watching has more insight into this than I do, love you to share that with the group. You can put it in the comments to this video or in the Discord. That reminds me, please like and subscribe. And in the description to this video, I have a link to the Discord I have set up. That's the generic fractional real estate investors Discord. There's also links to all the places where I currently invest in fractional real estate online. Do your own due diligence on those sites and on any properties on those sites. Just because I buy something or don't doesn't mean that you should. I know you can see I've got a 5 token buy order for $20. To me, that seems like a good value based on the research I did, relative to, this $34. I don't think that's if we believe we're getting paid back 100% on all those loans. That's not always going to be the case, right? And so I want to have a pretty good margin of error. I've got a low one built, put in there. And who knows? There's actually been sales, I think today. I don't know, maybe not today. But so, there's your guess is as good as mine what this is actually worth. But yeah, so just because I have that in there doesn't mean that's the price you should pay. Uh, I always like to tell you to do your own due diligence. And even every single day in the Discord, I see somebody talking, be like, "Oh, I bought this because you said that," or not me actually. Today I saw people blaming somebody else, like, "Oh, I bought this because for whatever reason." And it's like every single token that you buy or share on another platform or whatever it is, you should really dig into all the facts yourself. One, because you just never know why somebody is buying a particular property. If they have some other reason, there's like you just never know. So you always should be doing your own due diligence. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to say about this is sort of share like what I think is going on, and then hopefully have people tell me like, no, no, this is not right, and you can actually see the cash balance here, which I don't believe is out there. But honestly, my hope is this just reminds everybody who is sitting on some of these that we just need to bug Lofty about this. I just posted something in the Discord, but I think that that's not super useful. I think that probably an email to support is in order or something. But I think that whenever I would do this, I always like to get ideas and understand where everybody else is on this. Like, do you see this differently than me? Do you have more info than me? Um, do we have a good approach on how to get this addressed? Because I mean, yeah, $34 left out of 50 on a loan product is, that's a sad amount left, for, per token. So hopefully there's something wrong with this math, right? Hopefully there's some cash sitting there that we don't know about, or there's really not this many tokens outstanding. I mean, I don't know, but it is, that's where I ended up on it. And yeah, let me know what you think. Until then, I'm gonna just keep worrying about all this stuff that maybe I shouldn't be thinking about because why do I even care about it? But it's affecting our. It is like, I mean, to me the ULD, like this investment. Yeah, I was trying to sign off and then I decided I wanted to say this. Whatever happens with this investment, it's not gonna affect me. Like if it's completely wiped out, I'm not gonna think another 2 minutes about it. But I think that the way that Lofty handles this is really telling on like, okay, when they screw something up, what can we expect from them to actually fix it? And it's been tough seeing them address the Yom stuff like that. To me, it seems like they dropped the ball and they've really like just messed up they haven't really been helpful the whole way. They haven't been good at communicating. Um, but I think that there's, could be legitimate reasons for them to want to keep certain facts to themselves or certain, what they're going to do. Um, I still think even with that, we could have gotten a little bit better communication. But like this is one where it seems to me there are no outside repercussions for them to say, yes, this is an error. This is 100% caused by Lofty. There's no one else involved. uh, you know, this is how we're going to fix it, and it's going to happen quickly. Like that's something that I would love to see, but now we are sitting here 6 months later without a resolution. And so it is like every single time something like this happens, it makes me lose a little more faith in Lofty as a platform that I'm going to do business with long term. But even more so, like I think because Lofty is one of the larger players in this space right now, even though they're all in their infancy, I think it really hurts the fractional real estate investing space overall, right? Like, okay, we've already had the Landa issue, we have all these issues on Lofty, we have, there's so many, talked about the Realty, um, lawsuit going on. Every one of these that has problems is like making it tougher for the industry as a whole. And I mean, the reason I'm doing this channel is I'm bullish on fractional real estate investing. I think that there's a real need for it from the investor side, right? Like people who want to put their money to work in real estate but can't buy whole properties or want to get greater diversification. Or I think there's a lot of reasons that it makes a lot of sense from our side. But every time that a platform just really messes something up and doesn't, and is, or just there's fraud and abuse and they, that where there could have been really simple protections about some of it, or where, people had raised, some concerns about it and were dismissed early on. Like every time something like that happens, it just hurts the space more and more. Uh, as much as I'm still making money on Lofty, like I start to get to a point where I almost want to stop talking about them because I don't want people to come to the platform and then just lose money and get frustrated. Um, at the same time, I really think that if we all work together on this, we can sort of continue to pressure them to do the right things in different instances to create a better product, to I mean, but like to me, this is one that's it's 100% in their hands, right? Like they could, there's no reason whatsoever that they couldn't just address this, come out with a solution, say, hey, this is what we found out. We actually paid out, is it 23,000 or is it, another 15,000 on top of that or something? What is that? Um, I always like to do math. Yeah, another 13,000 on top of that. So like, is it 30,000? Like, how much got paid out? Over what timeline? Um, who bought it? Like, okay, I know I bought into a lot of the tokens I bought were when it said it was yielding 18%. Um, Obviously, I got paid some principal back, but at the same time, like I just never even would have made that investment if if they had been doing it properly and hadn't been mislabeling what they were doing, right? And so, I don't know. I think that there's just a real this is just one example of something that they could just change their image quite a bit, because I think that the general investor on Lofty right now, there are still a couple of super fans left, although I think they're dwindling. And I think most of them are like begrudgingly staying here, a lot of them hoping to get some money back, maybe thinking, maybe several like me that are just optimistic about the future and would like to see them change and fix certain things. Um, but, unfortunately, when you have stuff like this that just sits there for months, it's really tough to have any confidence in them as a platform, because it is. I mean, there's this. It's hard to see any reason that this isn't just 100% in their control. To just, like for me, if this were my business and it's okay, it's a $30,000 error. That's not that big of an error, right? Like they could just put 30K in there, say, "Yep, we screwed up. We made it right. Let's move on," right? And then you'd have. Uh, you'd have nobody worried about the ULD ever again, right? That it would be working the way it's supposed to from that point forward, right? They wouldn't be telling you so there's some crazy yield, because that wouldn't be there. They wouldn't be paying out principal. Um, anyway, now I'm really done. I know I tried to stop earlier and I didn't, but sorry about that. I just get a little ranty about this stuff. It is. Uh, I just want it. I want Lofty to just, just do the right thing, guys. I hope like this shouldn't be that hard of an issue. Like just to just make right. Anyway, that's it for me for today. Until next time, gonna keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.